The stars looked different now. Captain Lee Taman stood on the observation deck of the small space station, watching the massive alien ships approach. They were huge, dark metal beasts that blocked out the light from distant suns. Each ship was 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. "They're here," said Dr. Park So-young, joining him at the window. Her voice was calm, but Taman could see her hands shaking slightly. 47 ships. Our sensors show they have weapons that could destroy our entire planet in minutes. Taman nodded. He had been expecting this day for months. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Dominion Empire. They had been moving across space for hundreds of years, taking over every world they found. No one had ever said no to them. No one had ever survived saying no. "Are you ready?" asked Ambassador Choi Hee-jin as she walked into the room. She wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations. The aliens would expect fancy clothes and gold medals. Instead, they would meet humans who looked like ordinary people. "The others are waiting," Choi said. "Commander Kim Jae-ho has the defense plans ready. Not that we'll need them today." The 3 humans made their way to the meeting room. It was small and plain with a simple table and chairs. No throne, no fancy decorations, no guards with big weapons. Just 4 humans waiting to meet the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The alien ship docked with their station. The airlock opened with a loud hiss. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor. Then they appeared. Admiral Vexthar was 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. His uniform was covered in metals and bright colors. Behind him came 6 guards carrying energy weapons that glowed with purple light. They looked around the simple room and seemed confused. "Where are your leaders?" Vexthar asked in a deep voice. His words came through a translation device. "Where is your emperor? Your council of nobles?" "You're looking at them," said Ambassador Choi. She stood up slowly and smiled. "I'm Ambassador Choi Hee-jin. These are my colleagues. We speak for Earth and our colony worlds." Vexthar stared at them. His 4 eyes blinked in surprise. "You? But you're so small and few. Where are your armies? Your war fleets?" "We don't have armies like yours," Choi replied. "Please sit down. We have something important to discuss." The aliens sat down, but they looked uncomfortable. Vexthar's guards kept their weapons ready. They had never met beings who weren't afraid of them. "We know about your empire," Choi began. "We've watched you conquer the Kalari system. We saw what happened to the peaceful Myran people. We know you offer worlds a choice, join your empire or be destroyed." "Yes," Vexthar said proudly. "We bring order to the galaxy. We end wars between primitive species. We give them purpose under our rule." "That's not what we saw," Dr. Park said quietly. "We saw slavery. We saw entire populations forced to work in your mines. We saw cultures destroyed and people treated like animals." Vexthar's face grew angry. "You dare judge us? Your entire species lives on 3 small worlds. You have no great cities, no mighty weapons, no empire. You are insects compared to us." "Maybe," said Commander Kim Jae-ho, "but we're insects who have been watching you for a long time. We know how you fight. We know how you think. And we know your weaknesses." The room went silent. Vexthar's guards raised their weapons slightly. The tension was thick enough to cut. Ambassador Choi leaned forward. "We didn't ask you here to surrender. We asked you here to give you a warning. Mark human space as prohibited territory. Our worlds are not for conquest. Turn your ships around and leave us alone." Vexthar laughed. It was a harsh sound that echoed off the walls. His guards laughed too. You warn us? Do you know how many species have said those same words? Do you know what happened to them?" "Yes, we do," Choi said calmly. "The Zorian Federation said those words 50 years ago. They had 100 warships. You destroyed them in 3 days. The Hextari Empire tried to negotiate. You turned their homeworld into a mining colony. Every species that has faced you was stronger than us." "Then you understand," Vexthar said. "You will surrender now or we will take your worlds by force. You have 30 standard cycles to prepare your people for integration into our empire." "We understand something else," said Captain Taman. "Every species you conquered tried to fight you the same way. Big fleets against big fleets. Powerful weapons against powerful weapons. They tried to match your strength with their strength, of course. It is the only way civilized beings fight wars. But we're not like them," Taman continued. "We're not civilized in the way you understand. We're something you've never faced before." Dr. Park activated a small device on the table. A holographic image appeared showing the local star system. "For the past 5 years, we've been preparing. Not armies or fleets, but something else. We've studied every battle you've ever fought. We know how your technology works. Most importantly, we know how your mind works. Impossible, Vexthar snorted. Our technology is beyond your understanding. Our tactics have never failed. Your tactics work because every species you've faced thinks like you do, Kim said. They build big ships and train big armies and fight big battles. But humans don't always think that way. Sometimes we think small, sometimes we think different. Ambassador Choi stood up. This is your only warning, Admiral. You have powerful ships and strong weapons. You've conquered dozens of worlds. But you've never fought humans. Mark our space as prohibited territory and leave us in peace. It's better for everyone. Vexithar stood up too. His guards moved closer. You have 30 cycles, insects. Use them to say goodbye to your families. When we return, your choice will be simple, kneel or die. The aliens left the station. Their ships moved back to a safe distance, but they didn't leave the system. They just waited and watched, like predators studying their prey. After they were gone, the 4 humans sat quietly for a moment. Do you think they believed any of it? Dr. Park asked. No, said Ambassador Choi. They think we're bluffing. They think we have some secret weapon hidden somewhere. They can't imagine that our real weapon is that we think differently than they do. Captain Taemin looked out at the alien fleet. 30 cycles. That's not much time. It's enough, Commander Kim said. We've been preparing for years. Our people know what to do. The hard part was delivering the warning. Now comes the easy part. The easy part? Dr. Park asked. Kim smiled. Teaching the galaxy that sometimes the smaller army wins. 25 cycles had passed since the warning. Admiral Vexthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the screens that showed human space. Everything looked normal. Too normal. Report, he ordered his second officer. Long-range scans show minimal activity, sir. 3 small colonies, a few mining stations, some cargo ships moving between worlds. No military buildup. No fleet movements. No new defensive structures, Vexthar frowned. Are they hiding something? Our deep scans would detect any large ships or weapons, sir. They have nothing. A few patrol boats, some civilian vessels, nothing that could threaten even one of our destroyers. This made no sense. Every species the Empire had conquered spent their final days building defenses. They gathered their fleets, called in allies, prepared for desperate last stands. But the humans seemed to be going about their normal business. Maybe they're planning to surrender, suggested the weapons officer. Then why the warning? Vexthar asked. Why not just surrender immediately? What are they thinking? Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Park So-Young was thinking very carefully. She sat in a small laboratory, studying pieces of alien technology that human scouts had secretly collected over the years. Each piece told a story about how the Empire's weapons worked. The energy shields operate on rotating frequencies, she explained to her team. They change every few seconds to prevent enemies from adapting. But the changes follow a pattern. Once you know the pattern, you can predict when the shields will be weakest. Lieutenant Yoon Soo-bin looked up from her computer. That matches what our intelligence network found. The Empire's ships all use the same shield technology. They never changed the basic design because it's never failed them. Their weapons are the same way, added engineer Kang Dong-woo. Powerful but predictable. They always attack the same way because it always works. Big ships in formation, overwhelming firepower, target the enemy's strongest positions first. Dr. Park smiled. They've been so successful that they've stopped learning. They do the same thing every time because it's always worked before. But we're not like the enemies they've faced before, Yoon said. Exactly. Every species they've conquered tried to match their strength. Built bigger ships, more powerful weapons, stronger shields. But what if we don't try to match their strength? What if we use their strength against them? On the other side of the galaxy, Lieutenant Yoon's intelligence network was busy. Hidden human observers had been watching the Empire for years. They sat in dark rooms on distant worlds, listening to alien communications and watching fleet movements. The news they gathered was interesting. The Empire was having problems. Not big problems, but small ones that were growing larger. 3 mining colonies are behind quota, reported an observer on the edge of Imperial space. The workers are moving slower, making more mistakes. Security forces are using more punishment, but production keeps dropping. The Kalari system is showing signs of unrest, came another report. Nothing open yet, but our contacts say people are talking. They're asking questions they didn't ask before. What kind of questions? Asked Yoon. About the Empire's strength. About whether it's really unbeatable. Word is spreading about the human warning. Other species are starting to wonder if maybe the Empire can be resisted. This was valuable information. The Empire ruled through fear. Their strength came not just from their weapons, but from the belief that they could never be defeated. If that belief began to crack, their whole system might begin to fall apart. Back in human space, Captain Lee Taman was meeting with his defense coordinators. The meeting was held in a simple room on Earth's moon. No fancy equipment, no dramatic displays. Just people sitting around a table talking quietly. "Civilian evacuations are complete," reported one coordinator. "All non-essential personnel have been moved to safe locations. The colonies look normal from space, but they're mostly empty now." "Good, what about the defense preparations?" "All positions are ready. The asteroid field modifications are complete. The hidden fighters are in position. Electronic warfare systems are online and waiting. And the special surprise." The coordinator smiled. "Ready and waiting. The Empire won't see it coming." Taman looked around the table. These were ordinary people, engineers, pilots, technicians. None of them looked like warriors, but they had spent years preparing for this moment. They knew exactly what they had to do. "Remember," he said, "this isn't about winning one battle. It's about changing how the galaxy thinks about the Empire. Every action we take sends a message to other species. We're not just defending Earth. We're showing everyone that the Empire can be beaten." Meanwhile, Admiral Vexthar was growing impatient. 5 cycles remained before the deadline, and the humans still showed no signs of preparing for war. Their behavior was starting to worry him. "Sir," said his intelligence officer, "we're detecting some unusual communications from human space. Encrypted signals between their worlds." "What kind of signals?" "Unknown, sir. The encryption is simple but effective. It's not like anything we've seen before." "Are they calling for help? Trying to contact allies?" "We don't think so, sir. The signals are all internal, between human colonies and ships. It might be evacuation orders or military preparations, but..." "But what?" "The volume is too low, sir. If they were evacuating entire worlds or moving large military forces, we'd see much more communication traffic. This looks more like routine administrative messages." Vexthar stared at the display showing human space. Something was wrong. Not obviously wrong, but wrong in a way he couldn't understand. In all his years of conquest, he had never encountered behavior like this. "Maybe they're just accepting their fate," suggested his second officer. "Some species do that. They realize resistance is hopeless and just wait for the end. Then why give us a warning at all? Why not just surrender immediately?" Nobody had an answer for that. On Earth, Commander Kim Jae-ho was putting the finishing touches on humanity's defense plan. It wasn't like any military plan the Empire had ever seen. There were no huge battles marked on maps, no massive troop movements, no grand strategies for defeating superior forces. Instead, there were thousands of small plans. Tiny actions that would happen at exactly the right moments. Individual ships doing unexpected things. Single pilots making impossible shots. Engineers shutting down systems at crucial seconds. "The Empire expects us to fight like they do," Kim explained to his staff. "They expect big ships and formal battles and predictable tactics. Instead, we're going to fight like humans. We're going to be everywhere and nowhere. We're going to hit them where they don't expect it and disappear before they can respond." "Will it work?" asked one of his officers. Kim smiled. "It worked against the British Empire. It worked against the Soviet Union. It worked every time a small force faced a much larger one and refused to fight by the big army's rules. The Empire has never lost because they've never faced anyone who fights the way we do." The deadline was approaching. Soon, the most powerful military force in the galaxy would attack 3 small human worlds. But the humans were ready. They had spent years preparing not for the battle the Empire expected, but for the battle the Empire couldn't imagine. The galaxy was about to learn something new about war. The attack began exactly on schedule. Admiral Vexthar's fleet moved into human space in perfect formation. 47 massive warships, their weapons charged and shields at maximum power. It was the same formation the Empire had used for 3 centuries. It had never failed. "Target the main military installation," Vexthar ordered. "Destroy it completely. Show these humans what happens to species that refuse our generous offer." The target was a large space station orbiting the second human world. It looked impressive from a distance. Lots of weapons, thick armor, the kind of defensive structure every intelligent species built to protect their homeworld. All ships, open fire, Vexthar commanded. Purple energy beams lanced out from the Imperial fleet. The human station's shields flared and sparked as they absorbed the massive attack. For a few minutes, the station fought back. Its weapons fired at the Imperial ships, causing minor damage to their shields. Then the station exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Target destroyed, sir," reported the weapons officer. "The humans are finished." But Admiral Vexthar frowned. Something felt wrong. The battle had been too easy, too simple. The humans had built an impressive-looking station, but it had fallen much faster than it should have. "Sir," called the sensor officer, "multiple contacts approaching from the asteroid field." "What kind of contacts?" "Unknown, sir. They're small, moving fast, and they seem to be coming from inside the asteroids themselves." Vexithar looked at his tactical display. Dozens of small objects were moving toward his fleet. They had appeared suddenly, as if they had been hiding inside the space rocks. "Fighters?" he asked. "Possibly, sir. But the asteroid should be empty. Our scans showed no signs of life or technology." That was when the first asteroid moved. It was huge, the size of a small moon. It had been floating peacefully in space for millions of years. Now it was accelerating directly toward the Imperial fleet. "Impossible," breathed the sensor officer. "Asteroids don't move by themselves." "Unless someone puts engines on them," said Captain Lee Taemin from his hidden command ship. He watched the Imperial fleet's formation begin to break apart as the massive space rock bore down on them. "Target the command ships. Hit them before they can adapt." Pilot Imna Young led her fighter squadron out of their hiding places inside the moving asteroids. The Imperial sensors had been looking for ships, not for tiny human vessels hidden inside space rocks. Now those rocks were opening up like flowers, releasing swarms of small, fast fighters. "Remember the plan," Im called to her pilots. "Hit fast, hit hard, and disappear. Don't try to fight their big ships directly. Target their sensors, their communications, their engines. Make them blind and deaf." The human fighters moved like nothing the Empire had ever seen. Instead of flying in neat formations, they scattered in all directions. They used the asteroid field like a three-dimensional maze, appearing from impossible angles and vanishing behind space rocks before the Imperial gunners could target them. "They're everywhere!" shouted the Imperial weapons officer. "I can't get a lock on them." Meanwhile, systems analyst Lee Min-ho was doing something even more dangerous. His electronic warfare ship looked like a harmless cargo vessel, but it was filled with the most advanced computer systems humanity had ever built. "Beginning electronic attack," Min-ho reported calmly, "targeting their command and control systems." The Empire's ships were powerful, but they all used the same basic computer systems that human intelligence had been studying for years. Min-ho's virus program spread through the Imperial network like wildfire, scrambling communications and confusing targeting systems. "Sir, we're losing contact with the outer ships," reported an Imperial communications officer. "Something is interfering with our signals." Admiral Vexthar watched his perfect formation fall apart. His ships were trying to target the human fighters, but the small vessels kept disappearing behind asteroids. His communications were filled with static, his sensors kept showing false readings, and the asteroids kept moving. "How many engines did they put on these rocks?" he demanded. Colonel Shin Woo-jin answered that question from his special operations ship. "All of them," he said to his team. "For 5 years, we've been attaching hidden engines to every large asteroid in this system. The Empire was looking for warships and weapons. They never thought to scan space rocks for technology. Shin's ship was designed for one purpose: destroying command vessels. It was small, fast, and armed with weapons designed specifically to punch through Imperial armor. "Target the flagship," Shin ordered. "Take out their admiral and their fleet coordination will collapse." His ship dove toward Vexithar's massive command cruiser. The Imperial gunners tried to track him, but their targeting systems were still scrambled by Min-ho's electronic attack. Shin's weapons found their mark, punching holes in the flagship's armor and destroying several key systems. "Sir, we've lost navigation control," reported an Imperial officer. "Weapons targeting is down. Communications are failing." Vexthar felt something he had never experienced before: Fear. Not fear of death, but fear of failure. The Empire had never lost a battle. Never. But somehow these primitive humans were tearing his fleet apart. All ships, retreat to defensive positions, he ordered. Regroup and assess the situation. But retreat was harder than it sounded. The asteroids were still moving, blocking escape routes. The human fighters were still attacking from all directions, and more human ships kept appearing from hiding places throughout the system. Where did they all come from? Demanded the Imperial Censor Officer. The answer was simple. They had been there all along. Hidden inside asteroids, disguised as civilian ships, scattered throughout the system in tiny groups that looked harmless on long-range scans. The humans hadn't built a fleet to fight the Empire. They had turned their entire star system into a weapon. Dr. Park So-young watched the battle from her science ship. The Imperial shields were failing exactly as she had predicted. Their weapons were powerful, but poorly coordinated now that their communication systems were compromised. Most importantly, their rigid formation tactics were useless against an enemy that refused to fight in formation. Phase 1 complete, she reported to the Human Command Network. Imperial fleet effectiveness reduced by 60%. They're trying to retreat. Let them, said Captain Taman, but make sure they understand what just happened to them. The Imperial fleet pulled back to the edge of the system. They had lost 15 ships destroyed, and twice that many damaged. They had faced an enemy, with no large warships, no powerful weapons, no advanced technology, yet somehow they had been defeated. Admiral Vexthar stared at the tactical display in disbelief. How? He asked. How did they do this? His officers had no answer. In 300 years of conquest, they had never encountered tactics like these. The humans had fought like no civilized species ever fought. They had used deception, misdirection, and asymmetric warfare. They had turned their weakness into strength. Send a message to Imperial Command, Vexithar ordered quietly. Tell them we need reinforcements. Tell them the humans are not what they appear to be. Back on Earth, Ambassador Choi Hee-jin received reports of the battle's outcome. 15 Imperial ships destroyed, the rest retreating in confusion. No human ships lost, only minor casualties. It's a good start, she said to her staff. But this is just the beginning. The Empire will send more ships now, bigger fleets. They'll be angry and they'll be careful. Will our tactics still work? Asked one of her advisors. Choi smiled. The Empire thinks we won because we were lucky, or because we had some secret weapon they missed. They don't understand that we won because we think differently than they do. They'll keep trying to fight us the way they fight everyone else, and we'll keep fighting them the way humans fight. And if they adapt, if they learn from this defeat, then we'll adapt too. That's what humans do best. We change, we learn, we find new ways to solve old problems. The Empire has been doing the same thing for centuries. We've been getting ready to do something completely different. The first battle was over. The Empire had learned that humans were dangerous. Soon the rest of the galaxy would learn something even more important. The Empire could be beaten. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 3 centuries, the Galactic Dominion Empire had been defeated in battle. Species that had lived under Imperial rule for generations could barely believe it. The Empire was supposed to be unbeatable. Supreme Chancellor Zalthek stood in the Great Council chamber on the Imperial capital world. Around him, nervous officials whispered about the disaster at the human system. His 4 advisor generals looked worried, which was unusual. Nothing ever worried the advisor generals. Explain to me, Zalthek said in a voice like ice, how a primitive species with no military destroyed 15 of our warships. Admiral Vexthar's image flickered on the communication screen. He looked older than he had just days before. Supreme Chancellor, the humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They use tactics that are irregular. They hide their ships inside asteroids. They attack from multiple directions simultaneously. They use electronic warfare to disrupt our communications. They turn space debris into weapons. It's not how civilized species conduct warfare. And you were unprepared for uncivilized warfare? Vexthar's silence was answer enough. Zalthek turned to his military advisors. How many species have rebelled against us in the past 50 years? None, Supreme Chancellor. There have been minor uprisings. They have not rebelled against us. 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 They have not rebelled against us but no open rebellion since the Hextari were crushed. And how many rebellions have we detected since news of this human victory reached our outer territories? The advisors looked uncomfortable. 17, Supreme Chancellor. Small groups mostly, but the number is growing. Zalthek felt a cold fear in his chest. The Empire ruled through strength, but more importantly, through the appearance of invincibility. If subject species began to believe the Empire could be defeated, the whole system would collapse. Gather every available warship, he ordered. I want 500 vessels sent to human space. Destroy every human world. Make an example that will remind the galaxy why we are not to be challenged. Meanwhile, Captain Bei Jin-woo was having a very different conversation on his deep space reconnaissance ship. He floated in the empty space between star systems, his vessel disguised as a wandering asteroid. For months he had been secretly visiting worlds under Imperial control. The Kalari are ready to move, he reported to Earth Command. They've been building hidden weapons factories for 2 years. The Moran refugees have contacted their homeworld resistance cells. Even the Torvin mining colonies are showing signs of unrest. Commander Kim Jae-ho received the report with satisfaction. How many copies of our tactical manual have you distributed? Thousands, Bei replied. Every resistance group, every dissident cell, every species that wants to fight back. They're studying our methods, adapting them to their own situations. And the Empire doesn't know? They're too busy trying to figure out how we defeated their fleet. They think it was a fluke, a lucky accident. They can't imagine that other species might be learning from our example. The truth was more complex. Dr. Park So-young had spent years studying not just Imperial technology, but Imperial psychology. She understood that the Empire's greatest weapon was fear, and their greatest weakness was their inability to imagine that anyone might think differently than they did. Every species they've conquered tried to fight them on Imperial terms, she explained to a gathering of human leaders. Big fleets, direct confrontation, formal battles. The Empire knows how to win those fights, but we showed the galaxy a different way. And that's dangerous to them, added Ambassador Choi. Not just because we won, but because we proved that their way isn't the only way. Every subject species is now wondering what might happen if they tried something different too. On the far side of the galaxy, an alien named Kexran was having exactly those thoughts. He had been a slave in the Imperial mines for 20 years, ever since his homeworld was conquered. But yesterday, he had received a small data packet containing something called Human Resistance Tactics, a practical guide. Look at this, he whispered to his fellow workers. The humans didn't try to match the Empire's strength. They used the Empire's strength against them. How? Asked another worker. Deception, misdirection, hit-and-run attacks. They made the Empire's size and power into disadvantages instead of advantages. But the Empire is too strong. Their weapons, their technology. The humans had weaker technology too, but they didn't try to build better weapons. They found ways to make the Empire's weapons useless. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. Species that had given up hope were suddenly talking about resistance. Rebels who had been planning hopeless direct attacks were learning about asymmetric warfare. The Empire noticed, but they didn't understand what they were seeing. Increased security incidents in the outer territories, reported an Imperial intelligence officer. Sabotage, work slowdowns, communication disruptions. Nothing major, but the frequency is increasing. Natural response to news of our defeat, replied his supervisor. It will die down once we crush the humans completely. But it wasn't dying down. Lieutenant Yoon Subin's intelligence network was growing larger every day. Human agents were making contact with rebel groups across the galaxy, sharing information and coordinating activities. The Empire's response is predictable, Yoon reported to her superiors. They're sending their largest fleet to destroy us. 500 ships, including their newest and most powerful vessels. 500, Commander Kim repeated. Against our 3 little worlds. It gets better. They're pulling ships from garrison duty across the Empire. Dozens of worlds will be left with minimal Imperial presence. Perfect. Send word to our rebel contacts. Tell them the Empire is about to make their biggest mistake ever. The human plan was elegant in its simplicity. The Empire believed that destroying humanity would restore their reputation for invincibility. But to do that, they were weakening their control over their existing territories. Species that had been held down by Imperial occupation forces would suddenly find those forces gone. pulled away to fight humans. It's like pulling all the police out of a city to fight one criminal, Dr. Park explained. Even if you catch the criminal, you've created chaos everywhere else. Engineer Kang Dong-woo was busy preparing for the Empire's massive assault. But his preparations weren't what the Empire expected. Instead of building bigger weapons or stronger shields, he was creating more ways to confuse, misdirect, and frustrate Imperial forces. They're bringing 500 ships, he told his team. That means they'll be even more dependent on centralized command and control. More vulnerable to communication disruption. More likely to get confused when their formations break apart. Can we actually defeat 500 ships? We don't need to defeat them. We just need to delay them, confuse them, make them look weak and disorganized. While they're stumbling around our system, rebel groups across the galaxy will be striking at undefended Imperial positions. The plan was risky. If it failed, humanity would be extinct. But if it succeeded, it might spark the first galaxy-wide rebellion in Imperial history. Supreme Chancellor Zalthek didn't know about the human plan, but he could sense that something was wrong. Reports were coming in from across the Empire. Small incidents, minor problems, but too many of them to be coincidence. Perhaps we should delay the assault on the humans, suggested one of his advisors. Deal with these local issues first. No, Zalthek replied firmly. Every day we delay makes us look weaker. We crush the humans now decisively and completely. That will remind our subjects what happens to those who oppose us. And if we're wrong? If the humans are more dangerous than we thought? Zaltek's eyes glowed with cold anger. Then we destroy them anyway. The Empire has survived for 1,000 years by never showing mercy to its enemies. We will not start now. The largest fleet in Imperial history was assembled, 500 warships carrying weapons that could destroy planets, manned by the Empire's best crews. They began their journey toward human space, confident that they would end this rebellion once and for all. They didn't know that by leaving their posts, they had already lost the war. On Earth, Captain Taemin watched the approaching fleet on long-range sensors. It was a terrifying sight, a wall of metal and energy that filled space from horizon to horizon. Any second thoughts? Asked Ambassador Choi. Taemin smiled grimly. Just one. I wish we could see the Empire's face when they realize what we've really done to them. The massive Imperial fleet arrived at the edge of human space, but something was wrong. Very wrong. Admiral Vexthar stared at his communication screens in disbelief. Messages were pouring in from across the Empire. Not reports of victory, but desperate calls for help. Sir, the Kalari system has declared independence, reported his communications officer. They've seized all Imperial facilities and destroyed the garrison fleet. The Moran colonies have risen in revolt. Imperial forces are under siege on 7 worlds. Torvin mining operations have stopped completely. The workers have taken control of the facilities. The Outer Rim territories are in complete chaos, sir. Rebellions on 37 worlds and counting. Vexthar felt the universe spinning around him. How? How is this possible? Supreme Chancellor Zalthek's image appeared on the main screen. The Supreme Chancellor's usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely controlled rage. Admiral, what is the situation in human space? We've just arrived, Supreme Chancellor, but we're receiving reports of rebellions across the Empire. What are your orders? Destroy the humans quickly and return immediately. The Empire is under attack, but destroying the humans quickly was proving impossible. The 500 Imperial ships found themselves facing the same tactics that had defeated the earlier fleet, but on a much larger scale. Entire asteroid fields moved like living things. Swarms of tiny human ships appeared from everywhere and nowhere. Electronic warfare attacks scrambled communications and sensors across the Imperial formation. It's like fighting smoke, complained one Imperial captain. We destroy their ships, but more keep appearing. We target their positions, but they're already gone. Captain Lee Taemin coordinated the human defense from his command ship, hidden deep inside a hollowed-out asteroid. The massive Imperial fleet was impressive, but its size had become a weakness. With so many ships trying to operate in the same system, they kept getting in each other's way. Focus on their communications, he ordered. Keep their ships from talking to each other. Make each captain fight his own private war. Systems analyst Lee Minho had outdone himself this time. His electronic warfare systems were simultaneously attacking hundreds of Imperial ships, creating confusion and chaos throughout their formation. Their fleet coordination is breaking down, he reported. Ship captains are acting independently now. Some are trying to retreat, others are pushing forward, and a few are just sitting still waiting for orders that aren't coming. Meanwhile, Dr. Park So-young was putting the finishing touches on humanity's real victory. While the Imperial fleet struggled with human defenders, she was broadcasting a signal across the galaxy. "This is Dr. Park So-young of Earth," her message began. "To all species under Imperial rule, the Empire's largest fleet is here fighting us while your worlds are undefended. Now is your time. Strike now while they cannot strike back." The message was accompanied by detailed plans for rebellion, guides to asymmetric warfare, and most importantly, proof that the Empire could be defeated, not just once but repeatedly. Across the galaxy, the response was immediate. On the Kalari homeworld, rebel leader Kexran led an assault on the Imperial Governor's palace. "Remember," he told his fighters, "hit fast, disappear, hit again somewhere else. Make them chase shadows while we destroy their real targets." The tactics worked. Imperial forces trained to fight formal battles against conventional armies couldn't adapt to an enemy that refused to stand still and fight. On dozens of worlds, similar scenes played out. Mining colonies seized control of their facilities. Enslaved populations overpowered their guards. Resistance groups that had been hiding for decades emerged to claim their freedom. And with every Imperial defeat, more species joined the rebellion. Back in human space, the great Imperial fleet was slowly falling apart. They had superior weapons and armor, but they couldn't hit targets that wouldn't stay in one place. They had overwhelming numbers, but half their ships were too confused to fight effectively. "Sir," Admiral Vexthar's communications officer said quietly, "we're receiving a message from the humans." "Put it through." Ambassador Choi Hyojin appeared on the screen. She looked tired but calm. "Admiral Vexthar, we meet again." "Surrender now," Vexthar growled, "and we might allow your species to survive as slaves." Choi smiled sadly. "Admiral, take a look around. Look at what's happening to your empire while you're here fighting us. A few minor rebellions. We will crush them after we finish with you. Admiral, the Galactic Dominion Empire no longer exists. While you brought your 500 ships here to destroy 3 small human worlds, 47 Imperial systems have declared independence. Your slave species are free, your governors are dead or fleeing, and your mighty empire is crumbling to dust." Vexthar stared at her. "Impossible. You ruled through fear, Admiral. But we showed the galaxy that you could be beaten. Once that fear was gone, your subjects remembered that they outnumbered you 1,000 to 1. The truth was even worse than Choi had described. Reports continued to pour in from across Imperial space. Not just rebellions, but complete system-wide revolts. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were taking revenge on their former masters. "Supreme Chancellor," Vexthar called desperately, "request immediate instructions." But there was no answer. The Imperial capital world itself was under siege. "Sir," his communications officer whispered, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the capital system. It looks like the Imperial fleet there has been destroyed. The mighty Galactic Dominion Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, was dying. And it was dying because they had tried to destroy a small species that refused to fight by Imperial rules." 3 months later, Ambassador General Lee So-ra stood before the First Galactic Free Assembly. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Hall that had once been the Imperial Senate. Former slaves sat next to former rebels. Ancient enemies worked together to build something new. "The Empire is gone," So-ra announced. "The last Imperial stronghold surrendered yesterday. But we're not here to celebrate conquest. We're here to prevent it from ever happening again." The assembly erupted in cheers. But So-ra raised her hand for silence. "Many of you want Earth to lead this new galactic government. You want humans to be your new emperors, your new masters. But that's not why we fought. We didn't fight to replace one empire with another." She gestured to the mixed crowd of beings. "Every species here has something valuable to offer. Every world has knowledge, culture, wisdom that can benefit all of us. Why should any one species rule over the others?" "But someone must lead," called out a delegate from the Kalari system. "Someone must make decisions, coordinate defense, settle disputes." "Yes," So-ra agreed. "But leadership should be earned, not inherited. It should be temporary, not permanent. And it should be accountable to those being led." The proposal was radical, A galactic government where leadership rotated between species, where decisions were made by consensus, where no single world could dominate the others. It will be messy, Sora admitted. Democracy always is. It will be slow, inefficient, full of arguments and compromises, but it will be ours. All of ours. Dr. Park So-young, now serving as Earth's chief science advisor, added her own thoughts. The Empire was strong because it was unified under one will. But that was also its weakness. When that one will made a mistake, the whole Empire suffered. When many minds work together, mistakes can be corrected, problems can be solved from multiple angles. The vote was close, but the Galactic Free Territories was born that day. Not an empire, not a dominion, but something entirely new. A voluntary association of free worlds. Some Imperial loyalists escaped to the outer rim of the galaxy, vowing to rebuild their empire someday. A few worlds chose isolation over membership in the new government. Border disputes and trade disagreements continued to cause problems. But for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy was mostly free. Captain Taman, now Admiral of Earth's small defense fleet, stood on the observation deck of the space station where it had all begun, the same station where Ambassador Choi had delivered humanity's warning to the Empire. "Do you think it will last?" asked Commander Kim, joining him at the window. "The peace? The freedom? The new government?" "All of it," Tae-min thought for a moment. "Probably not forever. Nothing does. But maybe long enough for people to remember what freedom feels like, long enough for new generations to grow up expecting to make their own choices. And if someone tries to build a new empire," Tae-min smiled, "then they'll discover what the old empire learned. Sometimes the smaller army wins. Sometimes the species that looks weakest turns out to be strongest. And sometimes when you push people too far, they push back harder than you ever imagined." In the distance, ships from dozens of worlds moved peacefully through space. Former enemies working together, former slaves building new lives, former subjects learning to govern themselves. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was free. And it had all started with 4 humans sitting in a small room, telling the most powerful empire in the galaxy that some things were not for sale.